my own life to consider. So if I had to weigh it out, my breasts or my life, to me it was a no-brainer.
You know, it was interesting to me because in reading your book, which is an absolutely marvelous read, you ask a question. You say, it is our responsibility to stay on top of screening and self-examination. And here's the question. Don't watch and wait. What are you waiting for? For the cancer to spread into your body, your breasts, and more certainly your life are at stake? I mean, it is an emotional turmoil. And you have a section in here about the emotions you go through. Can you describe the emotional impact of what you went through?
Well, it was really a lot of ups and downs, and between my diagnosis, which was in May of 2006, my mastectomies didn't happen until May of 2010, and that was partly my fault with some scheduling issues, but those were the worst 4 months of my life. I mean, just the uncertainty, and what I didn't realize, in my head I'm like, okay, this is early-stage breast cancer, I'm going to be fine, I'll go through this, I'll be fine. But as I started digging deeper into my research and finding out and asking questions, and one of the things I realized, you don't get answers unless you know the right question to ask. So if you don't know the right question, you're not going to necessarily get an answer from a doctor. But anyway, so emotionally this was just really traumatic. I mean, just weighing on my head, and then having to have more tests. And I had my one and only panic attack during this time, which I never knew really what that felt like. So it was just emotionally a very difficult time.
You described something called doctor compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
That to me really hit home, because if I'm ill and I go to the doctor, there has to be a compatibility. There has to be a trust.
Right.
How did you know where to go? How did you know you were doing the right thing?
You know, I'm not sure that I did. Even the day of my surgeries, of my mastectomies, I actually felt like leaving that day and saying, you know, what am I doing? I think this is crazy. Let's get out of here. And especially I was in the waiting room, and there was a woman who obviously had gone through chemotherapy. She was bald, and I was thinking, God, is this some kind of sign? You know, I'm not sure which way to take this. You know, I didn't really know what to do, but in my heart I just went back and forth, back and forth. Like I said, I did a lot of research. I printed out things that I thought were reputable information from the Internet, asked a lot of questions. I'm a note taker, took a lot of notes, and just went back and forth with my decision. And, you know, many times I thought, okay, you know, that tamoxifen doesn't sound that bad. Radiation can't be that bad. Yeah, maybe it burns you a little bit. Maybe it tires you out, gives you some scar tissue. But one of the key factors also that I realized is that if you do have radiation and you get a recurrence in that same breast, then they really can't radiate that breast again, so you very well might wind up with a mastectomy anyway. So to me, I was like, you know what? I might as well. Let's just cut to the chase here. Let's get this done with.
And that was not a double entendre, I understand, when you said cut to the chase.
Exactly.
It's interesting, just so you know this. I dated a woman many years ago who, in her early 20s, had to have a double mastectomy.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out on a couple of dates, and I sensed something. There was just something. And she said, well, she said, before you take me out again and before anything happens, she said, I want to tell you the truth. I said, well, you know, I was assuming she was going to tell me something absolutely shocking. And she said, I want you to know I've had a double mastectomy. Mm-hmm. And I looked at her and I said, yes, so? But what difference does it make?
Right.
And her story then about her own self-image, her reaction to how, having been through this many times before, how people she was dating related to that was stunning. But I want to get to your survival point. We're going to open the lines up at 8080810. I also want to point out that the Mills Peninsula Hospital Foundation is hosting the 10th annual Mills Peninsula Women's Luncheon and Lecture on Monday, May 2nd from 11 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. at the San Francisco Airport Marriott Hotel in Burlingame. The featured speaker is someone just like you, Andrea. She's amazing. She's a journalist, an entrepreneur, and yes, most important of all, a breast cancer survivor. Linda Ellerby is going to be at that luncheon. Tickets start at $150. Proceeds go to the Mills Peninsula Hospital Foundation. And for more information, you can call 650-696-5908, or you can register online at mills-peninsula.org. Fighting this scourge is so important. When we come back, we'll talk about how you proceed, what you do when you find out you have breast cancer. What's the first thing you do after the panic? We'll come back with Andrea Schneider. Her book, You Are Not Alone, is an absolutely marvelous guide. It really is a very special book, available at Amazon.com. I am John Rothmann, right here on KGO. John Rothmann with you right here on KGO. My guest is Andrea Schneider. Her book, You Are Not Alone, Life After a Breast Cancer Diagnosis. A lot of people have emailed me, and the fundamental question that I'm getting is, when you find out that you have a problem, what should you do? Should you get one opinion, two opinions, three opinions? Where do you turn? What do you do?
Well, it really depends. If you have a good relationship with your doctor, like you said a few minutes ago, that's really important. You must find a doctor that you really trust and believe in. If you don't have that, you have to keep looking until you find the right doctor. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out and get 10 opinions. At some point, you need to make a decision. So for some people, they'll go with whatever the first opinion is, and they believe that doctor. That's great. I actually stayed with the same doctor I had right from the beginning for a while. I later changed.
Why? Explain why.
Well, she did my surgery. I thought she was a very skilled surgeon, but I was not happy with her bedside manner. She believed after she removed my breast that basically she was done with me, that I needed no follow-up. And I had done research, and according to the sites that I had looked at, it seemed to me that I needed follow-up for 5 years to at least have screening by a doctor every 6 months to do a clinical exam, to have them feel my new breast area, to see if there was anything suspicious. She believed, gee, I removed your breast, I took out as much tissue as I could take out, you're cancer-free in my book, I don't need to see you anymore, you're done, you're fine. And I didn't feel the same way. So I went to her a few more times, but in all honesty, she made me feel like I was a hypochondriac. And like, why are you here? I'm like, lady, you removed my breast. There's a reason I'm here. I had cancer. I want something. What I hadn't realized, even with all the research I was doing, that after a double mastectomy, I would not be able to get a mammogram. There was nothing that could be screened anymore. So my only examination would be by a doctor or my own examination.
Boy, it's fascinating. You really had to go through a real learning process, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I learned more about breast cancer than I really ever wanted to learn, but I really felt it was necessary. For me, in my mind, I needed to know this information to get through the whole process.
And we should point out that in the book, you cover everything from weight to diet to exercise, the role of alcohol. I mean, you go through so many different things, and you talk about the types of breast cancer treatment. And I want to run through some of those with you as well. My guest is Andrea Schneider. Her book is You Are Not Alone. It is available on from Amazon.com. It is a remarkable book. And the reason why I say that is because, well, I had the pleasure of spending some time with Andrea and with her husband and with her children. And facing this crisis, she came back with renewed vitality and life. A real tribute to tenacity and courage. So your calls, if you have had an encounter with breast cancer, if you'd like to bounce some things off Andrea, feel free to do so at 8080810. When we come back, I have a few more questions. I am John Rothmann right here on KGO. I'm John Rothmann. My guest is Andrea Schneider. This week marks the 10th anniversary of the death of my college girlfriend, Sherry, who succumbed to breast cancer. I met Sherry when I was in college. We remained friends through the years. I used to come to Disneyland. She sang in the Tomorrowland chorus, and as I said earlier, I would sit there adoringly as she performed. I spent Easter Sunday with Sherry and her family, and, well, 10 years. This week is Easter Sunday.